if you are not aligned or there's a muscle pulling to one side, you're going to start to have that disruption in your joint. You're going to start to inflame that capsule. You're going to start to inflame those bursa. You've heard the word bursitis before. Bursitis, all that is inflammation in the bursa sac. The bursa is just responsible to cushion a certain area. But let's just use the outpatient setting, right? You go to your physical therapist's office, okay? So I pull up in the parking lot, I get out of my car, I walk to the front door and I open up the door, and then I go to the lobby. I start talking to the receptionist, I go sit down. Guess who's watching you the majority of that time? Your therapist. When you don't find the balance between like stability and mobility and strength, you're gonna start to have problems.
Hello, and welcome to the show. My name is Tony Glasgow. I want to thank you for joining me on the show today. The series that I'm kicking off today is going to be extremely informative, whether you're a high school student, college athlete, or just a weekend warrior, because it's going to give you information that's just going to skyrocket your performance. I'm going to be talking with Laura Dill, who's a correctional exercise specialist, and she's going to tell you about ways to improve your flexibility, which will improve your endurance, your energy level, and just your whole mindset about how you prepare to go out and just do the things that you love, which is compete. First, I want to mention my tried and true featured business, which is Brits Kicks. The owner of that is Stephen Brits, and he does work on your shoes that you just will not believe. Whether they're new or old kicks, he can transform them into pretty much any design or idea that you may have. You can check out his work on Instagram. The link is in the description, and tell him that you heard it from me right here on my show, and he'll hook you up with whatever you want to represent, whether it's a player, certain school, or just whatever. Just call, check it out. You know, football season, volleyball season, basketball season, they're all underway, and you can go ahead and get something that represents what your school is, represents who you are, son or daughter that's playing in the sport, or whatever you want to do. He can hook it up for you. So go check him out. We've also got baseball and track getting ready to start up. He can get you some designs on those shoes that you buy for that event or for those sports. So check him out. Check out everything that he has to show. He displays all his work very nicely on his Instagram page. So check that out. Give him a holler and tell him I sent you. So right now I'm going to go ahead and get into the interview with Miss Laura, and I'll see you guys on the other side. How you doing this evening?
Good. How are you, Tony?
Doing all right. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, and exactly how you got into what you're doing right now?
Well, do we make a short story long? I mean, where do we start? So,
as long as you need to be.
Yeah. Okay. So, my background is corrective exercise. So, coming out of high school, I was, athlete, track and field, dabbled a little bit in basketball, realized that wasn't my thing. So went back to track and field and ended up in the field events. So shot put, discus, things like that. And always just kind of drove to be that athlete. From there, moved on, went to the military, was a truck driver for the Army, lived that life for a little bit, and then got back home and was working, in the medical field. And as I kind of sat back and saw these patients coming in, a lot of the times they were just getting Band-Aids, getting medication thrown at them. Nobody talked to them about exercise. Nobody talked to them about nutrition. And it was like burning a hole in my chest for a really, really long time. Right. So then I started to become a trainer. I took some classes, some online things, started reading a lot of books about becoming a personal trainer, not only for like friends and family, but for myself. I couldn't afford a personal trainer, and I knew I needed to kind of get myself together. I wasn't in an organization anymore. I wasn't in a sport. I started a fitness boot camp. So I had about 30 women that would show up 3 to 5 days a week at Laura's fitness boot camp. Extreme Fitness Boot Camp was the name of the company. Okay. And that spun off to, I had so many clients, I needed a place to put them. So I joined up with a local gym. That just kind of steamrolled me to owning my own facility. So for a decade, I actually owned my own gym in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. It was called Kettlebell 360 Endurance. We really focused on strength and conditioning, functional movement, and just making sure that the average everyday person had the foundation to not get hurt during their day-to-day activity. So in order to do that, I really needed to go back and get my degree in something. I just felt like school was calling my name, and in order to do certain types of certifications, you had to be like a physical therapist or a occupational therapist or something, and I didn't have the prerequisites for it. Nobody was really hiring PTAs. It was minimal amount of people come into the office. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I ended up working at a lot of skilled nursing facilities throughout Dallas. And even though I was really good at what I did, I was helping a lot of people. It just wasn't, I thought I was wasting my talent, especially working with athletes or people trying to aspire to be, better. So I wanted to get into the prevention side. And so, I spoke things into existence. You kind of start speaking it and the universe hears you. And something popped up about working with industrial athletes here in Dallas. And it was a company that does injury prevention for the industrial side. So, every day these hardworking people show up to work and have to do physical labor all day, pick things up, put things down, and they get hurt. So what we do is we go in and we work with work methods, and we work with teaching people how to move better within their work zones, and, keeping their elbows in and using the core and getting them strong to do the job that they need to do to keep America running, and keep them from getting hurt. But if they do get hurt, we are under the OSHA mandate and guidelines for first aid. We can do certain things for them. We can put ice on them. We could do massage. We could use a Theragun and get them back to a restorative level to get them back to work. And then now, I'm the senior operations manager for the company, and there's over 40 clinicians on a day-to-day basis that I work with throughout 16 states throughout the United States. And it's just a passion of mine. But my roots, do go back to that functional movement, that athlete or that everyday warrior.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of that, I did come across you by a friend of mine I've known for a long time. He introduced me to you, and it was because of my son was having some pains, and he thought that it would be a good thing for you to come see you. And it really was. But one of the things that I noticed first off, besides the knowledge that you have, is just exactly how you explained it to a person like me that I don't understand anything what you're talking about or anything that you do, but I do understand plain words. And that's exactly what you did. So did you have to craft that, or did that just come natural to you to explain that in layman terms to people?
Yeah. I think it was built over time. I was once a layman individual hearing very sophisticated, educated people speaking a language that was insane to me. Working in healthcare, being within doctor's office, I worked anywhere from primary care, to neurosurgeons, and to watch the patient's face completely lost, it's devastating.
Yeah.
And so I worked with a few physicians that what we would call it is dumbing it down. And I know that's probably quite offensive, but we have to dumb it down or change the jargon, just simplify the language, right? So a lot of times even though in the back of my head, let's talk about a shoulder injury. In the back of my head, I'm thinking all the rotator cuffs, there's 4 of them, or the labrum, or the capsules and all the bursa sacs and everything that's in there, along with the humeral head into the glenoid fossa. All I just said was your shoulder joint. Why do I need to speak big? Is it to influence my ego? I don't know. Is it easier for my medical mind to speak that way? Sometimes. But I have to simplify the language or orient it to how much that person is within that realm. So you just have to simplify the language. You can use analogies. You can use analogies such as one I use all the time is, and a lot of people know this, if your car is not aligned, what happens to your tires?
They get worn down.
They get worn down, right? They get worn down, they start showing metal, and they pop, and then there's a lot more cost down the road, right? You could have gotten a car accident, you bent your rim, there's so many things. I could use that same method for what's going on in your ankle and your knee, or what's going on in your hip. If you are not aligned, or there's a muscle pulling to one side, you're going to start to have that disruption in your joint. You're going to start to inflame that capsule. You're going to start to inflame those bursa. You've heard the word bursitis before. Bursitis, all that is inflammation in the bursa sac. The bursa is just responsible to cushion a certain area.
So one of the other things that I noticed pretty much first off within the first 5 or 10 minutes, besides you actually know what you're talking about, is that you identified what was wrong with my son, just in the first 5 or 10 minutes before you actually started an evaluation. So and that probably just comes with, experience as well. But did you see something as he walked or as he leaned or as he moved or anything?
So something that you learn as a coach, or you learn, in physical therapy, is something about the gait, GAIT. It's their walk. It's the stamina that they carry. So our body, we're a big X. We swing our arms when we move. It's a contralateral. My right arm swings forward as my left leg swings forward, right? So the body is made to be a certain way. So you can start to pick up on atalgic, which means painful patterns when somebody's walking. And so let's speak about your son. There's a catch in his walk, right? You start to identify which side that's on, or how he's standing, or how he's leaning, or how he's what's called guarded, like muscle guarding. And so you start to pick up on these things, and then you start asking history and breaking it down from there. But the first thing that we're looking at is the anatomical position we're in. So everybody has seen that image, and I want you to image. It's the naked man that's standing with his hands out, his legs apart in the circle.
Right. Yeah.
It's a very medical picture. Everybody can be familiar with that. And when he's standing there, his palms are facing you. Right? That's the proper anatomical position that the human body needs to be in. His feet are slightly turned out. That's the anatomical position. So when we speak terms, when we speak lateral and medial, posterior, anterior, inferior, all of those terms, it's based off of that image. So when we speak jargon to other medical providers, it sounds like Chinese. It's like, okay, he has lateral epicondylitis. What the hell? What did you just say to me, right? Well, lateral is to the outside. Epi is above. Condyle is a bone projection off of a certain bone, right? Lateral epicondylitis just means tennis elbow. Well, why didn't you just say that? Well, when I am speaking to another healthcare provider that their base language is Latin, it's the easiest way to communicate because it's equal across the board. Lateral means lateral. I don't have to question what that person meant, right? Yeah. So I had somebody who's walking towards me. If their palms are not facing me, I immediately am looking at shoulder and how internally rotated those shoulders are. If that person is walking towards me and they are pigeon-toed, their toes are coming in towards each other, I'm going to start looking at the hip. Why is the hip internally rotated and what's happening at the knee, right? It is a curse and a blessing at the same time.
I was just going to ask you, do you just automatically look at people and just start the diagnosing?
I do. It's terrible. I have to take the hat off sometimes, right? So the other things that we are taught to, and this is something else in consideration to your son, is we use our hands. We palpate, we touch. When we palpate and touch, we're trained how to tell the difference in certain tissues. Fibrotic tissue, tight tissue, swollen tissue, triggers in the tissue, tissues that's not tracking correctly. How is the patient taking the touch? Are they wincing? Are they pulling away from me? What is left compared to right? All of these things are part of our assessment process, and that assessment process starts the minute my eyes go to you.
Cool. So now going back to the athletes with the muscles turned on, are you seeing something with the way not just what you've seen, but just over pretty much all of athletes? Are you seeing anything that could be related to that, or making some of those muscles stay turned on where there could be injuries or cause injuries? Absolutely.
So some of the things, especially with working with so many athletes, they're pushed to like sport specific drills, right? Get stronger, get stronger, get stronger. when you don't find the balance between like stability and mobility and strength, you're going to start to have problems. So if you're constantly doing deadlifts, or you're constantly doing bench presses, or you're constantly doing front squats, back squats, whatever it might be, you're working in one plane and you're getting your prime muscles too strong. You have to do everything like you're baking a cake. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, right temperature, right icing, right weight till it cools, that type of thing. Because if I am pumping up my biceps because I want the sexiest arms, I want this big bicep and to pop through my shirt, and all I'm doing are bicep curls, I'm not taking into consideration a reflexive intrinsic muscle such as the rotator cuff. Okay. Those cannot be traditionally strengthened. Those I can't lift a weight and make those stronger. I have to challenge those intrinsic muscles reflexively.
How do you challenge those muscles or get them to fire like you need to?
That's going to go back to your primal movements, your primal reflexive movements. Like when we're a baby and we first lift our head up. We look with our eyes first, right? And then you start to lift your head up, look side to side. And then you start to learn how to roll. Then you start to learn how to get on your knees. Then you start to learn how to get up on your knees and your hands and rock, right? That's those intrinsic reflexive organisms in our body working to support joints, right? So if you look at the anatomy, we have bones first. Then we start to put the tissue on top. Then we start to put the muscle. Then we start to put the skin, right? All those connective tissues holding everything together. So I need to make sure those intrinsic stabilizers are functioning appropriately before I load anything else. Because if my bicep is too strong and I go to throw a baseball, my rotator cuff isn't ready, I am ripping something.
All right. Thank you for joining me for part 1 of my interview with Laura. She shared a lot of good information, and I hope you catch part 2, which is going to be coming up really soon. But in the meantime, don't forget to check out Britt's Kicks for your gear upgrade, and his info is in the description. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon.